Hey guys, tonight we're cracking open one of history's least cozy time capsules, the 1950s American home. Not the sitcom version, no cheery toasters or smiling dads in plaid pajamas, but the real thing. A place where linoleum shines, secrets are buried under shag rugs, and tough love means exactly what you hope it doesn't. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is, just in case you need to verify your alibi. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that gentle hum, and tuck yourself in, preferably somewhere your neighbours can't hear you laugh at the dark bits. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered what 1950s family values actually felt like from the inside? Was the American dream really just Tupperware and two-car garages? Or was it also shouting matches muffled by pastel curtains? Did Dad really rule the roost? Or did he just rule the remote, and maybe a little too much else? How many casseroles does it take to patch up a broken heart, and what's the going rate for a therapist who will never, ever be called? Did anyone ever call the cops? Or was that just a plot twist for the neighbours to gossip about? And how exactly did anyone sleep through all of this? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1957 in a perfectly average American house, complete with a husband, a wife, 2 kids, and a closet full of skeletons no one's allowed to mention. Good luck. Every brutal reality needs a polite opening act, and here it's the breakfast table. You shuffle in, still in your curlers or your undershirt, hoping for peace. Instead, you get burnt toast, cold coffee, and a silence so sharp you could butter it. This is where the daily dance begins, the eggshell walk, not the soft-boiled kind. Let's set the scene. It's 6:47 a.m., and the kitchen hums with the sounds of post-war prosperity. A new Frigidaire, a clock radio blaring Doris Day, and a Formica table that can withstand atomic blasts, but not last night's argument. The wallpaper is cheery, but the mood is strictly grayscale. You find your seat, the same one as yesterday, the same one as tomorrow, assigned, not chosen. The coffee pot gurgles like it's warning you. The day has begun, and you are now on duty. Dad sits at the head, newspaper fortress raised, as if the Wall Street Journal can shield him from the chaos he actually orchestrates. His fork clinks with authority. He clears his throat, the universal signal that it's time for someone to pass the sugar, or possibly offer up a confession. Mum moves quietly, pouring juice, refilling plates, scanning for crumbs like a general on inspection. Her apron is crisp. Her smile is optional. She's already had her first nerve pill with the orange juice, but the edge hasn't softened. Her eyes are on the clock. The day is a military operation. Breakfast at 7, dishes by 7:30, everyone out the door by 8, no casualties, no questions. And then there are the children, hair slicked, faces scrubbed, socks pulled up so high they threaten to cut off circulation. Johnny's working on his arithmetic homework. He's hoping Dad won't notice. Sally's practicing the art of silent eating, moving her Cheerios around the bowl like she's digging a tunnel out of Alcatraz. Every breakfast table has its own set of rules, and none of them are written down. Speak only when spoken to. Don't slouch. Don't play with your food. If you spill your milk, do it quietly. Don't make Mum cry before the first commercial break. If Dad sighs, you've already lost. If he folds his paper, brace yourself. You might think, how bad could it be? After all, the advertisements promised that a shiny new toaster would make the American family happy. But that's the thing. Happiness isn't on the menu. Routine is. Predictability is. And beneath that, tension so thick you could cut it with the blunt side of the butter knife if anyone dared. Breakfast isn't about nutrition. It's about survival. Each bite of powdered eggs is a test of your emotional reflexes. Will Dad explode over the weather report? Will Mum flinch if a plate drops? The kids have a scoring system, silent but real. Who can make it through breakfast without tears, raised voices, or someone storming off to the garage? Extra points for witty banter that doesn't end in disaster. Outside, a lawnmower sputters to life. Someone else's dad, someone else's problems. For a moment, you wonder if every house on the block is following the same grim recipe. A dash of hope, a pinch of fear, stirred and simmered over medium denial. No one looks each other in the eye. You focus on your plate, memorizing every crack in the ceramic, every fleck of bacon grease. Anything to avoid that one question, is everything all right at home? Because the only honest answer would ruin breakfast for everyone. And then, just as suddenly as it began, breakfast ends. Plates scraped, chairs pushed back. The dog licks something mysterious off the floor. Dad grabs his briefcase with the solemnity of a man heading to war. Mum wipes the table, her movements efficient, erasing all evidence of what didn't happen. You step into your day, bellies half full, nerves jangling. The table is quiet again, waiting for the next round, the next morning, the next silent storm. And somehow, you know, you'll be back in this same chair tomorrow, hoping the toast is a little less burnt and the silence a little less dangerous. Punchline. In 1950s America, breakfast isn't just the most important meal of the day, it's also the hardest to swallow. You quickly learn that certain things are never discussed. Not in front of the kids, not in front of the dog, and certainly not in front of the neighbours. You swallow your feelings with your orange juice, practicing the 1950s Olympic sport of emotional repression. If there's a secret national anthem for the 1950s, it's the hush between two heartbeats after someone asks, "Is everything all right at home?" That pause isn't just awkward, it's policy. The whole house is built on it. A delicate structure of unspoken rules and topics that stay locked in the basement, right next to the Christmas decorations and the suitcase you're not supposed to know about. You become fluent in the language of subtext. Mum's smile is tight. Dad's laughter is a little too sharp around the edges. You can tell a lot from how long it takes someone to answer, or how quickly they change the subject. How was work? Actually means, are we safe tonight? Did you sleep well? Means, did anyone hear the shouting through the walls? Every question is a riddle, every answer a lifeline you can't quite grab. The windows in a 1950s home are always sparkling, but the real transparency is in the way no one sees what's right in front of them. You could be sitting at the dinner table with a shiner blooming under your eye, and everyone will comment on the weather instead. "Looks like rain tomorrow," Dad says. You nod, grateful, terrified, both. It's code for, let's not. On the rare occasion a neighbour pokes her nose in, "Everything all right over there?" You're trained to smile, nod, and say, "Oh, just dropped a plate." Never mind the fact that you don't own china, and the crash sounded suspiciously like a fist. The neighbourhood grapevine runs on plausible deniability. If it isn't discussed, it isn't happening. And if it isn't happening, everyone can sleep a little better tonight. You learn the choreography early. If voices rise in the living room, you and your siblings become shadows, tiptoeing into bedrooms, closing doors, turning up radios, practicing invisibility like it's your first job. Even the dog has a sixth sense for when to hide under the bed. The family cat is the only one who seems unimpressed by all the drama, licking its paws as if to say, "This isn't my circus." Some silences are soft, like a gentle snowfall that blankets the mess. Others are sharp, spiked with the memory of last night's argument or the anticipation of tomorrow's. There's an art to silence here. You don't just avoid the obvious topics, you learn to avoid the emotional landmines buried in every room. A wrong word, a wrong look, and suddenly the walls are closing in. Television helps. The sitcoms are loud, bright, and full of laughter, the perfect white noise to cover anything unsightly. The family gathers on the couch, eyes glued to the glowing screen, each person secretly grateful for the distraction. Nobody talks about the bruises, but everybody remembers the punchlines. At school, you become an expert at small talk. How was your weekend? Oh, just the usual. You practice smiling with your mouth, not your eyes. The teachers don't ask why your homework is late. The school counsellor glances your way and then back to her paperwork. She knows the rules too. When you're older, you might find yourself in a therapist's office, unravelling decades of buttoned-up feelings. We just didn't talk about those things, you'll say, and the therapist will nod as if you've just explained the theory of gravity. Because in the 1950s, silence is heavier than air. It presses down on your chest, sits on your tongue, and if you're not careful, becomes part of your DNA. And so, day after day, you breathe in, hold it, and exhale only what's acceptable. You say nothing, hear everything, and hope that someday someone will be brave enough to break the silence, if only to ask, "Are you okay?" and actually want the answer. Punchline. In 1950s America, some things just aren't said out loud, unless you count the thunderous, echoing silence. Dad reads the paper at the head of the table, the air thick with cigarette smoke and expectations. His word is law, even when his law is mostly grunts, threats, or the slow, simmering kind of anger that lives in his jaw. He's the sovereign of suburbia, king of the castle, lord of the living room recliner. You don't dare sit in his chair. That's not just a family rule, it's written into the very fabric of the universe, somewhere between gravity and taxes. Every morning, Dad appears in pressed slacks and a shirt starched to within an inch of its life. Even his slippers look formal, like they might deliver a lecture on punctuality if given the chance. His authority radiates outward, an invisible force field. The air around him is always just a little colder. Even the dog gives him a wide berth, tail tucked, as if to say, "Hey, I don't make the rules either." When Dad sighs, everyone hears it. When he clears his throat, forks freeze mid-air. He has mastered the ancient art of communicating entire dissertations through a single raised eyebrow. He reads the paper, always the front page first, then the sports, then maybe the funnies, though nobody ever sees him laugh. You can tell his mood for the day by how hard he snaps the paper open. A gentle flick means you might survive until bedtime. A hard crack of newsprint is your cue to keep your shoes laced and your apologies ready. Dad's opinions are delivered with the weight of absolute truth, whether he's talking about the Reds, the price of gas, or why no one needs to see a psychiatrist. Ever. If you're brave, or foolish, enough to challenge him, he'll look at you over his glasses, a look that has ended more arguments than any diplomatic treaty. If you win, you lose. If you lose faster. At the table, his presence is a constant test. He doesn't have to say much. His silence is its own sermon. When he does speak, it's often in the form of commands. Sit up straight. Don't talk with your mouth full. What's this on your report card? You answer quickly, hoping your voice won't crack. Every meal is a quiz you didn't study for, and Dad is the teacher who always thinks you're cheating. Anger isn't always loud with Dad. Sometimes it's the kind that soaks into the drywall, the kind that makes the house creak a little when he walks down the hall. You can hear it in the way he closes a cabinet, in the too careful setting down of a coffee cup. Every now and then, the anger erupts, and you know it's been waiting there all day, percolating beneath his aftershave. The yelling is never about what it's really about. The shoes left out, the report card, the noise in the hall, it's all just kindling. You live your life by his moods. If he's quiet, you're careful. If he's happy, you're suspicious. When he's late, you worry. And when he comes home early, you worry even more. His schedule is as predictable as his temper isn't. Yet in public, Dad transforms. The neighbours know him as such a nice man, always quick with a handshake, never a hair out of place. At church, he's the model of propriety. He helps set up folding chairs and nods politely at sermons about kindness, justice, and forgiveness, then drives home 10 miles over the speed limit, radio cranked, jaw set. You don't talk back. You don't roll your eyes. You definitely don't bring up what happened last night. You learn to measure your words like teaspoons of nitroglycerin. Home is quieter, cleaner, sharper when Dad's around. But for all his bluster, you know there's another side. Moments when his hand lingers just a second too long on your shoulder, or he brings home your favourite comic strip, pretending not to notice how you light up. Sometimes you catch him looking tired, even lost, like a general after the battle, wondering if the war was worth it. He never says it out loud, and you don't either. That's another unwritten rule. Punchline: in 1950s America, father may know best, but sometimes best is just a synonym for don't ask questions. Mother isn't coping, but she's certainly medicating. A little nerve pill with her coffee, maybe a second one by lunch, and a polite smile that looks like it hurts to hold. The pharmacy is more visited than the confessional. You wouldn't know it from the outside. The hair is always set, the lipstick always perfect, the apron ironed so stiff it could double as body armour. But inside the medicine cabinet, hidden between the cough syrup and last year's expired sunblock, is a lineup that could knock out a small horse. Tiny pastel tablets in chic little bottles, each promising serenity, patience, maybe even a reason to get out of bed and butter one more piece of toast. The commercial on the radio makes it sound so simple. Feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or just a bit blue? Ask your doctor about Milltown, the modern way to keep your smile sunny. And so she does. The doctor doesn't ask many questions, just scribbles something on a pad and tells her to rest. Rest. As if there's any time for that between two kids, an irritable husband, and a Hoover that's clogged with secrets. By noon, the coffee's half gone, the to-do list hasn't gotten any shorter, and the sharp edge of panic has dulled to a manageable hum. She calls it taking the edge off. You learn early that the edge is something sharp enough to cut, and the pills are there to file it down before anyone else notices the blood. Afternoons are for chores and carefully scheduled despair. Mother floats from room to room, polishing, folding, making beds that will be wrinkled again in an hour. If you ask her what's wrong, she'll say she's just tired, which is 1950s code for please don't ask. You watch her hands shake as she wipes down the countertop for the third time, her eyes never quite meeting yours. The pills make her more efficient, or at least quieter. If you mention the bottle on the windowsill, she just laughs and says, "Doctor's orders," as if the doctor also prescribed pretending. There's a ritual to it. The little glass of water, the clink of a pill against porcelain, the furtive glance at the clock to see how long until the next dose. Sometimes she lingers in the bathroom, listening for footsteps before she opens the cabinet. Privacy is a luxury, and in this house the only locked door is the one with the medicine inside. The neighbours don't talk about it, of course. Everyone's mother is on something, or should be, and nobody asks questions that might get real answers. At Tupperware parties and bridge clubs, the topic is always recipes, not remedies. Still, every purse on the coffee table rattles just a little when picked up. She keeps a bottle in her purse just in case. At the grocery store she pops a mint, followed by something a little stronger. The pharmacist knows her by name, so does the man who delivers the mail, and the cashier who rings up her cigarettes and quietly ignores the trembling in her hands. There's an unspoken understanding in the town. Women hold up the sky, and if the sky's getting heavy, well, there's a pill for that. At night, after the house is finally still, and the television glows blue in the corner, she sits at the kitchen table, staring at her own reflection in the window. Maybe she's counting pills. Maybe she's counting blessings. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, and if she cries, it's silent and brief, a storm that passes before the morning alarm, erased by cold water and one more careful coat of foundation. By breakfast, she's ready to smile again, even if it's just for show. Punchline. In 1950s America, a mother's smile could light up a room, or at least distract you from the rattle of pills in her pocket. The neighbours pretend they can't hear a thing, but you know every word carries through the walls thin as hope, thick as dread. The radio's always on, the vacuum is always running, and nobody's fooling anyone. It's a suburban symphony. The low whine of Mrs. Miller's Hoover, the steady drone of the TV in the Johnson's den, the barking of a dog that always seems to get nervous just before things start getting loud next door. Everyone's got a soundtrack, and everyone's got something to hide. You wonder how the walls ever got so thin. Maybe it was the war effort. Maybe it was the budget. Maybe it was just a nationwide preference for pretending. Your own house seems to breathe with secrets. At night, when the air is heavy and the streets are still, you can hear the click and rumble of your father's footsteps pacing the living room. A sharp word, a slammed door, the muffled thud of something, someone hitting the wall. Even the wallpaper seems to tremble. Mum turns up the radio, switches to the station with the brightest brass, as if Perry Como can drown out what's happening on the other side of the drywall, but sound travels in mysterious ways. In the bathroom, above the sink, if you stand very still, you can hear Mr. Henderson next door. He coughs, sometimes he sings, sometimes he curses. You know more about your neighbours than you do about some relatives. You can tell when Mrs. Henderson's been crying. You can tell when the Johnsons' oldest son comes home drunk. The noises from house to house blend into one, like a chorus of everything's fine in 4/4 time. During the day, everyone tries their best to keep up appearances. Mrs. Miller sweeps her porch like she's erasing evidence. Kids ride their bikes on the sidewalk, swerving to avoid cracks and bad memories. If you meet a neighbour's eye, there's a flicker of understanding, something between apology and complicity. Nobody ever says, "Did you hear?" They just nod, or smile too hard, or ask if you'd like to borrow a cup of sugar. Vacuum cleaners are the most loyal companions. Nothing says "do not disturb" like a Hoover roaring at full blast for no apparent reason. The vacuum blocks out raised voices, or at least makes it possible to say later that you didn't hear. The best defense against awkward questions is a clean rug and a noisy appliance. Sometimes you vacuum even when the floor is spotless, just for the cover it provides. Kids learn the art of eavesdropping and denial simultaneously. You press your ear to the vent, heart racing, and then swear you didn't hear a thing. You become an expert in nonchalance, a tiny professional in the field of not reacting. If you see bruises, you don't mention them. If you hear crying, you don't ask why. You become fluent in the language of plausible deniability. I'm sure it was just the TV. Maybe something fell. I think the dog knocked something over. The irony, of course, is that everyone is pretending together. It's a group activity, keeping the secrets, maintaining the story, upholding the legend of peace and prosperity. The neighbourhood block party is a pageant of careful grins, lawn chairs, lemonade, and a mutual agreement that nobody knows anything at all about anyone. When the police car does roll down the street, everyone watches from behind the curtains. The dog stops barking. The kids freeze. The neighbours lean in, but nobody opens the door. After the car leaves, the silence is even heavier. Tomorrow, someone will say it was a misunderstanding, or a raccoon in the garbage cans, or nothing at all. At night, when everything is quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the ache in your chest, you realise the walls may be thin, but the silence between them is even thinner. You can cover it up with music, with chores, with cheerful denial, but you can't unhear what you've heard, and you can't pretend that nobody knows. Punchline. In 1950s America, the only thing more fragile than a suburban wall is the promise that what happens inside stays inside. Corporal punishment isn't just accepted, it's practically patriotic. You learn fast that wait until your father gets home isn't a threat. It's an appointment with the family tradition. This is an era where discipline is measured in decibels and the speed of a leather belt leaving a loop. There's a paddle in the kitchen drawer, a wooden spoon in the living room, and a yardstick with a chip out of it in the hall closet. You know exactly where each weapon lives, like a burglar casing the joint. If you're lucky, your transgression merits nothing more than a glare over the rim of Dad's glasses. If not, you're about to get a hands-on lesson in respect for authority. Every adult is deputized for discipline. Teachers, neighbours, the woman at the corner store who once smacked your brother for pocketing a licorice whip. The only people who can't spank you are the kids down the street, though if they could, they probably would, just to see if it works. At school, the principal keeps a paddle in his office, right next to the American flag and the Pledge of Allegiance. No one questions it. Patriotism, discipline, and a little light bruising go together like jello, canned fruit, and whipped cream. The system is beautifully simple. You break a rule, you get spanked. You talk back, you get spanked. You forget to say please or thank you, you get spanked with extra emphasis. There's no Geneva Convention for childhood infractions. The process is efficient and highly motivational, at least motivational if you want to become a professional escape artist. You learn to judge the weather by Dad's mood. Stormy means hide. Calm means you might live to see the next episode of The Lone Ranger. Mums have their own arsenal, a sharp flick on the ear, a pinch on the arm, a wooden spoon that's only for special occasions and never, ever for stirring soup. She can snap your name so hard it echoes through the house, even over the sound of the vacuum. Her look alone is enough to drop the temperature 5 degrees and reduce you to a puddle of sorry. And then, of course, there's the talk. The lecture is as inevitable as the spanking, and somehow worse. You stand there, cheeks burning, eyes on the floor, as Dad explains the moral universe in a monotone that lasts exactly as long as his cigarette. Why did you do it? There is no correct answer. You learn quickly that explanations are suspicious and apologies are currency. Your best bet is silence, remorse, and the faint hope that next time you'll be more invisible. If you're especially unlucky, your punishment is public. There's nothing like the shame of being spanked in front of your siblings, or worse, your friends. Word travels fast. By dinner, the whole neighbourhood knows you cried. Johnny down the block claims he never cries, but you saw him sob when his dad broke the yardstick. Boys don't cry, except for all the times they do. No one calls this abuse. The radio says it's firm discipline. The parenting books call it raising productive citizens. The pastor in church just calls it biblical. You keep your head down and hope that productivity and citizenship hurt less when you're an adult. But there's a silent bond that grows among the kids. You invent games to see who can dodge the fastest, who can guess which offence merits which implement. You trade stories like war veterans, comparing welts and survival strategies. The older kids whisper that someday you'll all move out and never spank your own children, but you say it quietly, just in case the wolves are listening. Punchline. In 1950s, America, if love means never having to say you're sorry, discipline means never having to say you won't do it again, at least not where anyone can catch you. The kitchen is the safest room in the house, unless it isn't. Sometimes the cupboard doors slam a little too hard, or a dish shatters for reasons that can't be explained to the kids. Let's talk about kitchens in the 1950s, because they are the stage where the American dream performs its tightest smile. Everything is bright, everything is clean, everything is designed to look like a cheerful advertisement where a woman in pearls laughs while holding a roast the size of her emotional burden. The countertops shine, the fridge hums like a calm domestic robot, the oven ticks, the coffee pot burbles, and somewhere in the background, a radio chirps out a jingle that makes it sound like happiness can be purchased for $19.99 at Sears. And you, in this kitchen, are always doing something. Wiping, stirring, folding, scraping. There's always a dishcloth in your hand, even if you don't remember picking it up. Because if you stop moving, you might start thinking. And thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to questions, and questions lead to answers, and answers lead to things nobody's allowed to say out loud. The kitchen is where you can stay busy enough to avoid the rest of the house. It's where you can make noise on purpose. The faucet runs a little longer than necessary. The cabinet door closes a little harder than it should. You drop a spoon into the sink just for the clatter. It's all perfectly normal. It's all perfectly accidental. It's all perfectly calculated. If you're a kid, the kitchen is your refuge. It smells like toast and canned soup. It smells like safety, at least compared to the living room where Dad's shoes are lined up like marching soldiers, and the air feels like it's waiting for someone to explode. In the kitchen, Mum is usually there. And even when she's tired, even when she's distant, even when she's holding herself together with pins and pills, she's still present. The kitchen is where Mum's hands do the talking. She pats your head while she stirs the gravy. She smooths your hair while she checks the roast. She doesn't ask too many questions because she can't afford to know the answers, but she feeds you anyway. In the 1950s, feeding people is how you say I love you when I love you feels too complicated, too dangerous, or too likely to start a fight. And then there are the sounds. A plate slips and breaks. That happens. Sometimes dishes break. Sometimes a glass shatters because the counter is wet. Sometimes a bowl falls because someone's hands were shaking too much. And sometimes it breaks because it was thrown. But you don't say that. You don't think that. You just sweep up the pieces and say, well, that's just great, with a smile so forced it could lift furniture. You learn that the kitchen is also where you hide evidence. If there's blood on a shirt, you scrub it in the sink before anyone else sees. If there's a bruise blooming on Mum's arm, she keeps her sleeves down even when it's warm, standing at the stove like she's auditioning for a role titled Woman Who Is Definitely Fine. And the bruise. Oh, the bruise is never what it is. It's always something else. Mum bumped into the pantry door. Mum tripped over the vacuum cord. Mum reached too far into the oven. Mum is just clumsy. And you, sitting at the table, nod like you believe it, because believing it is part of the deal. If you don't believe it, the whole thing cracks open like that plate. You also learn the magic of the kitchen table itself. It's where the family gathers, but it's also where the family performs. Dinner is served and everyone pretends the day was normal. Dad talks about work, Mum asks about school, the kids chew quietly. The sound of forks against plates is the only safe kind of clinking. But even during dinner, the kitchen holds its secrets. It's a room full of weapons that can pretend to be harmless. Knives, hot pans, boiling water. Not in a dramatic way, not in a movie way. Just in a quiet, constant way that makes you understand that safety is a thin layer, like wax paper over something sharp. Sometimes Mum stays in the kitchen after dinner. She doesn't sit down. She keeps cleaning even when everything is already clean. She wipes the same spot on the counter 3 times. She rearranges the spice rack. She checks the fridge. She stands there, listening to the house, waiting to see what kind of night it's going to be. And you realise the kitchen isn't just where dinner is made. It's where people survive. It's where the pain is softened with soup. It's where fear is drowned in dishwater. It's where the bruises are hidden under aprons and the truth is scrubbed until it almost disappears. Punchline. In 1950s America, the kitchen is where the heart of the home lives, and where the home quietly learns how to swallow its own heartbeat. On Sunday mornings, everyone becomes an actor. You dress in your best, paste on your smiles, and pray that no one asks about the fresh scratch on your cheek. The ritual begins early. The whole house transforms from a battlefield into a Broadway dressing room. Mum wakes first, tiptoeing around creaky floorboards, gathering everyone's good clothes from the back of the closet, pressed the night before, checked for stains and suspicious rips. You're scrubbed until you shine, ears inspected for dirt, fingernails clipped and threatened with public shame if you dare chew on them during the sermon. Even the dog gets a special collar. There's a sense that today, if only for an hour, your family will pull off the greatest illusion of all: normalcy. Breakfast is more hurried and more careful than usual. No one wants to start a scene before the main event. Arguments are put on hold. Bruises are covered with makeup or a strategically placed hat. Mum applies her lipstick with military precision, her hands only shaking when she thinks no one's looking. Dad knots his tie, muttering curses at the mirror, trying to wrestle last night's demons into submission with pomade and aftershave. You learn the delicate art of layering: shirt, vest, jacket, mask. Outside, the neighbourhood blooms with families climbing into Buicks and Chevrolets, clutching Bibles and Tupperware, waving to each other with forced cheer. The air smells like hairspray and secrets. It's not just your family. It's every house on the block putting on the same show, starring the same cast. The obedient children, the gentle mother, the benevolent father. The drive to church is quiet. A tense ceasefire broken only by the preacher's voice on the radio or a reminder not to fidget. In the parking lot you take inventory, scanning for other kids who might have matching scratches or suspiciously puffy eyes. You exchange nods. You know, they know, everyone knows. But today, silence is golden. Stepping into church is like stepping onto stage. The sanctuary is flooded with light, high ceilings, stained glass, and the thick scent of ancient hymnals. The pastor stands at the door, shaking hands, blessing foreheads, and sometimes letting his eyes linger just a moment too long on that bruise peeking out from a cuff. "Rough week?" he asks with a gentle smile. "Oh, you know how it is," your dad replies, and that's the end of it. During the service, your family sits together in the same pew, a row of pressed collars and polished shoes. You sing hymns with voices that crack, kneel at the right times, and pass the offering plate like you're handling something fragile and possibly explosive. The sermon is about love, patience, forgiveness. God sees all, but the neighbours mostly see what you want them to. The congregation nods, amens float up to the rafters, and everyone's halo gleams a little brighter beneath the electric lights. The real performance happens at coffee hour. Cookies are exchanged, casseroles compared, small talk expertly deflected. "How are you, dear?" "Oh, just wonderful, thank you." Mum's smile is so bright it could deflect suspicion from a crime scene. You field questions about school, sports, the weather, anything but home. Sometimes Mrs. Barker offers you a second cookie, her hand soft on your shoulder, her eyes too knowing. You eat the cookie in silence. Back home, the spell breaks the moment the door closes. You unbutton, unlace, and unclench. The mask goes back on the shelf with the good china, ready for next week. Whatever was hidden returns to its familiar shape, settling over the house like dust. Punchline. In 1950s America, church isn't just a place of worship. It's where families go to pray that nobody's looking too closely. If anyone calls the cops, they're in for a pep talk, not a rescue. The officer tips his hat, tells you to work it out at home, and leaves you to your tidy nightmare. In 1950s America, the police officer is less a harbinger of justice, and more a roving extension of neighbourhood denial, polished shoes and all. His patrol car glides slowly down maple-lined streets, windows rolled down to catch the scent of baking pies and brewing trouble. He knows every address, every dog, every kid by name, and perhaps more importantly, he knows exactly when not to get involved. When the phone call finally comes, whispered, urgent, from behind a locked door, the response is as familiar as Sunday dinner. The squad car pulls up, lights mercifully silent to avoid disturbing the neighbours. Officer Jenkins steps out, hat square, smile ready, clipboard tucked under his arm like a prop in a stage play. He rings the bell, careful not to scuff the porch paint. He's been here before. Inside, the house smells of Lysol and fresh coffee. Emergency tidying always precedes a visit from the law. You stand beside Mom, trying to look smaller than you feel. Dad leans on the kitchen counter, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes narrow. The officer greets everyone warmly, as if he's dropping by for a game of cards. "So what seems to be the trouble?" he asks, as if he doesn't already know. His eyes sweep the room, noting the trembling hands, the red-rimmed eyes, the awkward silences. But procedure is procedure. He listens, nods sympathetically, takes a few notes that will never be filed, and delivers the prescribed lecture. Now, he says, voice calm and paternal. Every family has its moments. "I'm sure if you folks sit down with a nice cup of tea, you can talk this out. No need for any more excitement tonight, eh?" He winks at you as if he's letting you in on a secret. The secret is, nothing will change. He turns to Dad, giving him the benefit of the doubt and the benefit of the system. "You're the man of the house. I'm counting on you to keep things steady." To Mom, a gentle squeeze of the shoulder. "You let us know if things get out of hand, all right? We're always here to help. But help is a relative term. Help means letting you know they'll drive by more often, not that they'll ever stop. The visit lasts just long enough to establish that the right forms have been observed and the correct social niceties performed. No arrest, no paperwork. The badge leaves the house as immaculate as it entered. Officer Jenkins tips his hat, wishes you all a pleasant evening, and walks back to his car, ready to repeat the scene 2 blocks over if needed. Back inside, the atmosphere is both lighter and heavier. You've learned that the police are there to keep the peace, not to disturb it, especially not in the quiet neighbourhoods where lawns are trimmed and secrets are mulched under the roses. The neighbours peeking through the curtains will say, "I saw the squad car. Everything all right over there?" You'll smile, nod, assure them everything's fine and life will go on, at least on the surface. For kids, the lesson is clear. Authority is just another adult in a hat, another pair of eyes that see but don't look. The uniform means safety on television and silence at home. If you're hoping for rescue, you'll need to look somewhere else, or learn to rescue yourself years down the line when the rules finally change. Punchline. In 1950s America, calling the cops is like ordering soup at a hardware store. You'll get a polite smile, some friendly advice, and absolutely none of what you actually needed. The marriage vow to obey is more than a punchline. You realise it's a lifelong job description, with hours, duties and penalties spelled out in slammed doors and silent dinners. If you were at a wedding in the 1950s, you'd hear the familiar cadence: to love, honour and obey. The guests all nod, as if obedience is as natural as wearing a white dress or cutting the cake with a knife that's never seen an argument. Nobody blinks, nobody giggles. Everyone understands that in the holy trinity of matrimony, obey is not just ceremonial filler, it's the meat in the marital meatloaf, right next to silently endure. After the honeymoon, obey comes off the church programme and settles into the daily grind. It lurks between the laundry basket and the casserole dish, in every polite yes, dear, and every careful silence. There are rules for everything: how you speak, how you laugh, how you react when he's late for dinner and smells like a different kind of aftershave. When in doubt, defer. When unsure, agree. The penalty for failure is rarely immediate. No lightning bolts or dramatic speeches, just a sudden coldness that turns a warm home into a walk-in freezer. You learn to read moods the way some people read horoscopes. The sigh as he sits in his chair, good day or bad. The clink of his fork at dinner, minor annoyance or major storm. You become an expert at managing atmosphere, adjusting your smile, your tone, your entire personality to keep the peace. Obedience isn't about bowing and scraping, it's about running the household in invisible ways so nothing and no one ever tips over the edge. Every argument is a negotiation with history. This is just how marriage works, your mother assures you, passing the mashed potatoes like a peace offering. You'll understand when you're older. Your father, for his part, never apologizes for anything. He simply doesn't bring it up again, and by breakfast the slate is wiped clean except for the bits that never quite wash away. When friends drop by for coffee, you practice subtle semaphore with your eyebrows. How much can you say without saying anything? The code is passed down through generations, small sighs, perfectly timed laughter, and the kind of careful gossip that reveals everything and nothing at the same time. My husband can be stubborn, someone confesses, and the table nods in silent understanding. The unspoken addendum, but so can the rules. Weddings are supposed to be about love, but marriage, 1950s style, is a job, one with no sick days, no HR department, and the kind of overtime that never shows up on a paycheck. The vows are binding, the script is memorized. You play your part because to do otherwise is to invite questions, or worse, pity. And in the 1950s, pity is just another word for scandal. Every so often, you catch a glimpse of what could be different. A neighbour's wife who speaks a little too freely, or a cousin who goes back to work after having children. There are whispers, modern woman, troublemaker, but also a flicker of envy. What would it be like, you wonder, to write your own rules? But the thought vanishes quickly, chased away by the next load of laundry and the weight of 100 years of family advice. Still, there are moments of kindness, sometimes even joy, a quiet hand on your back, a shared joke, a memory of why you said yes in the first place. Love is there sometimes, but it is hemmed in by duty. Obedience is the floor you walk on, smooth in places but full of hidden splinters. Punchline. In 1950s, America, wedding vows weren't just words at the altar, they were the user manual for a life spent making sure the soup is hot and the arguments are cold. The glow of the television is the one place everyone can agree to stare, together but apart. You watch sitcom families who never yell, never hit, and never, ever show up with a black eye. By the late 1950s, the family TV is the new hearth. It flickers in the corner, filling the living room with canned laughter and fake applause, promising a reality far warmer than the one stitched together by linoleum and anxiety. Dinner used to be an event, a roast, a blessing, a lot of chewing, and even more careful silence. But now trays of Salisbury steak and peas line up in front of the couch, everyone facing the same way, united in not talking about anything at all. There's an art to eating a TV dinner. Peel back the foil, ignore the mystery meat, jab the peas until they roll into the mashed potatoes. The food is always just hot enough to burn your tongue and just bland enough to keep you from lingering. Forks clatter, trays rattle, but nobody minds because nobody's listening. The only voices in the room come from the screen, and they're always just the right amount of loud. Your favourite families live in black and white. Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, The Donna Reed Show. They beam into your house night after night, endlessly patient, unfailingly polite. Their problems are always solved in 22 minutes, usually with a hug and a joke about the neighbour's cat. On those rare occasions when TV parents disagree, it's with a raised eyebrow and a sigh. Apologies are swift. Forgiveness is a commercial breakaway, and nobody ever throws a casserole dish against the wall. You study these families the way archaeologists study ancient civilizations. What do they eat? How do they talk? Is it really possible to fix everything with a heart-to-heart and some warm milk? You wonder if other kids at school live this way, or if they too count on television to teach them the words their parents never say. The screen becomes a window, a portal, a very polite witness to everything that doesn't happen in your own house. Sometimes the commercials are the best part. Mothers in heels dusting already spotless end tables, fathers whistling as they drive home from work, children with hair so shiny it could double as a car hood ornament. You start to believe that if only your family bought the right laundry soap, or the new TV with picture tube clarity, everything might finally make sense. Maybe if your mashed potatoes were as fluffy as the ones in the ad, your father would smile more, and your mother would stop flinching every time the phone rings. The best part is the way television absorbs all the tension in the room. Arguments pause for the Ed Sullivan Show. Disagreements evaporate when Lucy does something outrageous. Even Dad laughs, just for a second, and in that moment the world softens at the edges. The TV is Switzerland, a neutral territory where nobody has to win or lose, where bruises can hide behind flickering shadows, and all the sharp words are spoken by strangers paid to be funny. But when the credits roll and the screen fades to black, you're left with a stack of empty trays and a room full of people suddenly uncertain where to look. The quiet is heavier somehow, and the only thing left to do is switch off the set and hope tomorrow's rerun is just as good at keeping everyone safely distracted. Punchline. In 1950s America, the family that eats together stays together, unless, of course, there's something good on TV, in which case everyone just agrees not to look too closely at each other's plates or their dreams. The women gather for Tupperware and coffee, swapping casserole recipes and coded warnings. It's amazing how much can be said in a single raised eyebrow. Step into a suburban living room on a Thursday afternoon, and you'll find the true backbone of 1950s America. A half-dozen women in crisp shirtwaists and pearls, perched on floral couches, eyeing a pyramid of plastic containers like they might explode. There's laughter and clinking cups, and underneath it a current of electricity stronger than the percolator working overtime in the corner. The Tupperware lady is the ringleader, part cheerleader, part therapist, part arms dealer in the war against leftovers. She demonstrates the airtight seal, burping the lid with practiced confidence. The others ooh and ah, not just because they need to keep their tuna salad fresh, but because this is as close to a revolution as anyone is allowed to get. Just listen to that seal, they say, and what they really mean is, I am still here, I am still holding it together. As the demonstration winds down, the conversation shifts. Recipes are exchanged with surgical precision, each ingredient carefully annotated with whispered asides. Use a pinch more salt if you know what I mean, someone offers. Bake for 20 minutes, unless you need to stall for time. Laughter bubbles up, but nobody explains the joke. No one needs to. Between the talk of casseroles and jello molds, a parallel conversation weaves through the group. Silent, subtle, deadly serious. The language of women in 1950s suburbia is less about words and more about tone, glance, gesture. Mrs. Carlson's bandaged wrist draws a fleeting glance. Mrs. Adams, always in long sleeves, always pouring another cup. How's your husband, dear? Oh, busy as ever. Another round of polite nods, another secret carefully tucked away. This is where the real information changes hands. Who's missing from Bridge Club? Who was seen crying at the grocer's? Whose car was parked outside the doctor's office 2 days running? They trade intelligence the way their husbands trade baseball cards. Discreet, meticulous, and absolutely essential for survival. A woman might say, let me know if you need anything, but what she really means is, if you knock on my door after midnight, I'll answer. There's safety in these gatherings, a tiny, stubborn kind of resistance. For a few hours the women are off the clock. No one expects a roast or a report card. They're free to talk about lipstick shades, knitting patterns, or the new family on Elm Street, and to say the unsayable without ever speaking it out loud. Every laugh is a small act of rebellion. Every sideways glance is a shield. Younger women listen and learn. They watch the way Mrs. Miller shakes out her tablecloth before the party, checking for crumbs and for evidence. They memorize the way Mrs. Reynolds never sits with her back to the window. The lessons aren't printed in any manual, but they are passed down, one cup of coffee at a time. Of course, there's always one woman who never says a word. She smiles, she samples the cake, she leaves early. Her silence rings louder than any story. Everyone notes it. Everyone remembers. The party ends with promises to meet again soon, to exchange more Tupperware, more recipes, more tiny lifelines in a world determined to keep everything fresh and nothing exposed. Back at home, the containers go in the cupboard and the secrets go in the heart. The next day, the cycle begins again. Laundry, groceries, smiles on demand. But the whisper network endures, humming quietly beneath the churn of the washing machine, ready to spring into action when the next raised eyebrow says more than words ever could. Punchline. In 1950s America, the Tupperware was airtight, but the truth always managed to leak out one whisper at a time. Anything can be ignored if you call it a phase, rage, bruises, screaming matches, unexplained absences. You're told to keep calm and carry on, even if it kills you. That's the real secret weapon of 1950s suburbia. Denial, lacquered so thick over daily life that even the most spectacular meltdowns can be written off as just a phase. Dad slams the door hard enough to rattle the good china. He's under a lot of pressure at work. Mum disappears into the bedroom for 3 hours, shades drawn, radio on. Just tired, dear. Your brother punches a hole in the garage wall. Boys will be boys. A bruise blooms on your arm, and you flinch when anyone hugs you. But as long as you show up for dinner, it's nothing a little meatloaf can't fix. There's a script handed down from one generation to the next, with lines for every possible disaster. Teenagers are always moody. Your father's just blowing off steam. Your mother's got a touch of nerves. The goal is never to fix the problem, just to label it, wrap it in cellophane, and stick it on the shelf next to the Jell-O salad. Anything too unsightly can always be hidden under a generous topping of whipped cream. School counsellors, teachers, even the family doctor are in on the act. He's just acting out, they say, as if slamming a locker or bursting into tears in the middle of algebra is the emotional equivalent of catching chickenpox, unpleasant but temporary, and certainly not contagious. You're sent back home with a note that says, keep an eye out, as if the solution is just a little more supervision and maybe a stricter bedtime. Meanwhile, at home, the walls close in and the volume goes up. Night after night you hear the same argument on repeat, like a B-side nobody likes but everyone keeps playing. The neighbours hear it too, but the next morning it's back to lovely weather we're having. And your azaleas look healthy. If someone's missing for a day or a week, you're told not to worry. Everyone needs a little time to themselves. If someone's crying in the backyard, they're just sensitive. The only thing you're not allowed to be is dramatic. The TV helps. It teaches you that real problems can be fixed with a laugh track and a sincere hug. On screen, when something goes wrong, it's always just a phase. A puppy chews the sofa, a son skips school, a daughter gets her heart broken no matter the trouble. A wise adult assures them, this too shall pass. The world resets itself after every commercial break, spotless and smiling. You wish life worked like that, with easy fade-outs and no leftovers. You become a master of self-soothing. You tell yourself you'll grow out of it, that everyone feels lonely sometimes, that homes are always this loud, this quiet, this unpredictable. Your friends tell the same story with different details. Nobody admits how long their phase has lasted, and so, the years stack up, each one another layer of denial. You graduate, you move away, and sometimes you even believe it, that what happened was normal, that the house wasn't filled with secrets, that you survived because you were strong and not just lucky. The truth is, survival was a group project. Everyone pretending, everyone carrying on, everyone waiting for someone else to call the phase over. Punchline. In 1950s, America, it's just a phase wasn't just an excuse. It was a national coping strategy, strong enough to outlast the worst of times, and gentle enough to leave everything exactly as it was. The children learn the rules without ever being told. They flinch at loud noises, tiptoe through rooms, and become experts at pretending not to notice the obvious. It happens slowly, quietly, like water finding its level. No one sits you down and explains why you keep your voice down after 6 p.m, or why you pause at the top of the stairs to listen before entering the living room. You just pick it up. You become fluent in adult tension, able to read the room with a single glance, dad's jaw, mum's posture, the way the air feels heavy or thin. By age 8, you could win an Olympic medal in conflict avoidance. You instinctively know how to close doors without a sound, how to slide your cereal bowl across the table instead of lifting it. You and your siblings have developed a whole language of looks, wide eyes that say hide, a flick of the chin that means meet me outside, a quick glance at the clock that says almost time for dad to get home, scatter. You become a master of the early warning system. You sense the storm long before it breaks. The footsteps are a little too heavy, the television is a little too loud, the silence in the kitchen stretches out like a warning. You invent excuses to stay at a friend's house just a little longer. You suggest a game in the backyard right when mum's voice goes thin and sharp. Your world is made up of gentle detours and invisible boundaries. When adults speak, you listen for subtext. Everything's fine means absolutely nothing is fine. Go play outside is not a suggestion, it's a lifeline. You and your siblings compare notes in whispers, trading theories like amateur detectives. I think it's worse when it rains. Or did you hear what Dad said last night? The trick is to whisper only when you're sure the coast is clear. You never know when a vent might carry your words a little too far. At school, you perfect the art of blending in. You keep your head down, do your homework, and laugh a little too hard at the teacher's jokes. You dodge questions about home life. If you get called to the nurse for a tummy ache, you know how to smile and insist it's nothing. Kids like you are easy to spot if you know the signs. Jumpy, careful, always watching the door. In the neighbourhood, you build alliances. The girl across the street whose mum yells at her dog. The boy who spends all his afternoons at the library. You recognise each other without ever saying why. You share snacks, secrets, and silent solidarity. Nobody calls it fear, but everyone feels it. There's a whisper network for kids too, one that runs on glances and body language, all the things grown-ups say kids don't notice. You become good at hiding things, bruises, broken toys, the feeling that something's wrong. You keep secrets, not just for yourself, but for the whole family. Loyalty is a survival strategy. If you accidentally let something slip at school or with a neighbour, you learn quickly. Loose lips sink more than ships. They shake the whole house. But even in the quiet, there's comfort. Your siblings are your co-conspirators, your lookouts, your refuge in the middle of the storm. Sometimes you lie awake together, whispering in the dark, making up stories about how things will be different someday. You promise each other that when you're grown, your house will be quiet for real. Not quiet with dread. Punchline. In 1950s America, children are seen and not heard, unless you listen closely enough to hear the whispers that say what nobody else will. If you confess to anything, it's to the family doctor. He nods, writes a new script, and tells you to rest. Therapy is for movie stars and people who can afford to talk. In the 1950s, the family doctor is a fixture of every neighbourhood. A man with a black leather bag, a calm bedside manner, and a prescription pad that seems to refill itself overnight. He knows every family, every secret, and every symptom you're brave enough to mention in a hushed tone behind the exam room door. His office smells like rubbing alcohol, menthol, and a faint undertone of cigarette smoke. For his nerves, he'll explain as he lights up between patients. Your mother visits him for her nerves. Your father sees him for his tension. You go for mysterious stomach aches, headaches, or the vague feeling that you might simply vibrate into pieces if someone doesn't listen soon. The doctor listens, nods, and pulls a little white notepad from his pocket, the magic wand of mid-century medicine. A little something to help you sleep, he offers. Or, let's try these for your mood. The cure for every ailment, emotional or physical, is another small bottle from the drugstore shelf. The questions he asks are gentle, indirect, and always just shy of the truth. How's everything at home? Is followed by a careful look, a pause, and then a brisk move to blood pressure or pulse. He senses more than he says. If your mother's hands shake or your brother's grades plummet, the doctor might raise an eyebrow, but he never pushes. No one wants to embarrass a patient or themselves by naming what can't be named. Better to write a prescription, smile, and move along. Pills are dispensed as casually as advice. The pharmacist down the street fills the orders, no questions asked, labelling bottles in elegant cursive, for sleep, for nerves, as needed. There's a certain prestige to having your own prescription. It means you're cared for, even if the care is a little fuzzy around the edges. The medicine cabinet at home rattles with options. Mother's little helpers, dad's muscle relaxers, something for your growing pains and something else for the sadness that sometimes settles behind your eyes. You learn early that talk is expensive, but pills are cheap, at least in the short run. There's no such thing as a child psychologist unless you're rich, in California, or fictional. In your world, therapy is what happens on television, or maybe in the movies when a glamorous woman clutches a cocktail and says, "I just need to talk to someone, darling." At home, talking is discouraged. Medicating is not. Occasionally you overhear grown-ups murmuring about the asylum, a word that floats through conversations like a ghost. No one ever actually goes, but its shadow lingers. If you talk too much, cry too much, or make the wrong kind of fuss, you might find yourself shipped off to the state hospital for a rest cure. The doctor would never threaten it outright, but the message is clear. Cope quietly, or else. The cycle is familiar and oddly soothing. You visit, you explain just enough, you accept the pill, and you carry on. The doctor pats your shoulder, reassures you that you're doing your best, and sees you out with a promise that next time, maybe you'll feel better. In this way, the doctor becomes a kind of confessor, not to sins, but to symptoms. You come to him not for rescue, but for relief. And so your family lines up at the pharmacy, picking up another round of bottled solutions, each one promising sleep, peace, or a softening of the edges. No one is cured, but everyone is comforted, just enough to make it through another week. Punchline. In 1950s America, the only thing more trusted than the family doctor is his prescription pad, and neither is ever in short supply. As long as the grass is trimmed and the flowers are blooming, everything's fine. Your garden is a bright green lie that everyone's happy to believe. Welcome to suburbia, where the only thing more manicured than the bushes is the narrative. The front lawn is both battlefield and billboard, a patch of green that reassures the world you're living exactly as you should. The neighbours survey your efforts with the intensity of Olympic judges. "Have you tried that new fertiliser?" Mrs. Riley asks, her own roses lined up like soldiers. "Your tulips look just lovely," she adds, which is code for "I see you're still holding it together." Every Saturday, Dad dons his unofficial uniform, high-waisted trousers, white undershirt, and a hat with a sweat-stained band. He marches out with mower in hand, determined to conquer the dandelion insurgency and remind the block that discipline starts at the property line. You might think he's working off stress, but really he's staking a claim. Here lies a respectable family, one blade at a time. The grass may be greener on the other side, but it's only because the other side waters more. Out of spite, competition, or desperation, who can say? Children are deputized as assistant groundskeepers. Your job is to pick up stray sticks, chase off rabbits, and never, under any circumstances, dig up the petunias. You learn early that bare patches in the yard are like bad grades on a report card, best disguised as quickly as possible. If a spot refuses to grow, sprinkle extra seed and hope nobody notices. If all else fails, arrange the garden gnome for maximum distraction. The rules of the front yard are clear: no weeds, no clutter, and absolutely no evidence of last night's argument flung into the azaleas. Inside the house, life may be messy, unpredictable, or worse, but outside everything lines up. Hedges trimmed, grass cut in neat parallel rows, and the garden hose rolled with military precision. The mailbox stands at attention, an unblinking sentry for your secrets. There's a competition simmering just below the surface. Neighbourhoods host unofficial beauty contests every weekend. Awards are given in the form of second glances, quiet nods, and the coveted Yard of the Month sign, which rotates between driveways like a hot potato of suburban validation. If you win, the pressure only mounts. Can you keep it up? If you lose, you grumble about unfair judging, secretly vowing to fertilise harder next spring. Flowers are more than decoration, they're character witnesses. Irises testify to your commitment, marigolds to your perseverance. A thriving rosebush is worth more than 100 awkward conversations. Even the crabgrass, if kept in line, signals to the world that your family is functional, your bills are paid, and your problems don't spill past the picket fence. Of course, nobody mows the backyard quite so obsessively. Out back, the grass can be long, the toys scattered, the old swing creaking in the wind. The real you, the messy you, lives behind the house. But the front lawn is a mask, and you wear it for the world, hoping the neighbours see what you want them to see, and nothing else. After a hard week, you sometimes catch your parents sitting on the stoop, surveying their kingdom. They don't talk about work or money or why mum's voice is hoarse. They just look at the lawn, the flowers, the neat little rectangle of order. For a few moments, it's enough. Punchline. In 1950s America, you can let your heart go to seed, but heaven help you if the crabgrass gets out of hand. Every household keeps a secret ledger: who said what, who did what, who slammed which door first. Grudges pile up faster than laundry. You might not see the book, but you know it exists. Maybe it's invisible, maybe it's hidden in a kitchen drawer beneath the warranty for the toaster and the stack of unpaid bills, but everyone keeps score. Each sarcastic comment, each eye roll, every sigh heavy enough to rattle the windows, they're all tallied up somewhere. The real sport of 1950s America isn't baseball, it's passive-aggressive bookkeeping. It starts small. Dad comes home late from work 3 nights in a row. Mum forgets to iron his favourite shirt. Johnny leaves his bike in the driveway again, and Dad accidentally runs over the front tyre. The points rack up quickly. No referee required. You learn early that forgive and forget is just a nice way of saying file it under future ammunition. The phrase "let's move on" is never the end of anything. It's a bookmark for the next round. Arguments in the house come in flavours. The loud ones with doors slammed so hard the whole block flinches, and the quiet ones with cold looks and meals served with an extra helping of frost. Sometimes the fighting happens in code. I guess someone forgot to pick up the milk. Well, I suppose some people are too busy to remember. This is emotional tennis and nobody wins, but everyone plays until someone accidentally breaks a plate. Children pick up the scoring system quickly. You learn to keep a running total. How many times Dad has yelled? How many times Mom has retreated behind a locked bathroom door? How many times you've snuck out to the backyard just to breathe? There are grudges so old you suspect they predate your birth, passed down like bad china or weirdly shaped casserole dishes. The kitchen is often the arena, The table, the scoreboard. Forks clink, spoons scrape. But it's the silences that hold the most weight. Last night's fight is served cold with breakfast, everyone pretending not to notice that the syrup bottle got a little extra slam. If things get really tense, someone will break the ice by offering a backhanded compliment. Nice shirt, dear. Too bad about the stain. Outside, the neighbours would never guess. Your family waves politely, attends every barbecue, and brings a pie to the new couple next door. But you know, deep down, everyone is keeping their own secret tally. Who hosted last? Who borrowed the hedge trimmer without asking? Who forgot to return the casserole dish from Christmas 1952? The currency of suburbia is favours and slights, exchanged in quiet warfare disguised as hospitality. When apologies do come, they're wrapped in qualifiers and jokes. Sorry about earlier, I was just tired. I didn't mean it, but you know how things get. Nobody ever admits defeat outright. Admitting you were wrong means surrendering a point, and in this game, every point is precious. It's possible to spend decades accumulating grievances, storing them in mental attics until they're needed for a particularly spirited debate over something truly trivial, like the correct way to fold towels. Grudges in 1950s. America aged like fruitcake, dense, hard, and nearly impossible to get rid of. Yet somehow, life keeps rolling along. Laundry gets done, bills get paid, and the argument about who forgot the car keys last time lives to fight another day. Punchline. In 1950s America, love means never having to say you're sorry. Just make sure you keep the receipts, because you'll need them for the next round. The master bedroom is no sanctuary. It's another front in the war, negotiations in whispers, refusals that become accusations, apologies that never come. By day, the bedroom looks harmless. Ruffled curtains, matching lamps, a bedspread as crisp as a handshake. But after dark, the rules change. This is not a haven. It's neutral ground, a DMZ, the place where resentments come to roost. The Do Not Disturb sign is invisible but understood. When the door is closed, it doesn't keep out the noise, it only muffles it, just enough for plausible deniability. Mum's headaches are famous, the household's open secret. They arrive with suspicious regularity, always around the same time, after a long day, after a longer argument, or after too many glasses of wine at dinner. She says the word softly, headache, and it hovers in the air, a white flag nobody wants to acknowledge. The phrase is a shield, a magic word that's supposed to end the conversation. But in the 1950s, nothing ends that easily. Dad reacts with practiced disappointment, a sigh that sounds like a verdict. Sometimes there's a brief negotiation, maybe just a back rub, maybe tomorrow. Other nights, the silence settles like a fog. The tension is as heavy as the chenille bedspread. No one sleeps well, and the morning arrives with both sides having lost something. Patience, pride, or another piece of what used to be affection. The bedroom arguments are quieter, but no less bruising. Voices drop to whispers, words carefully chosen, apologies rehearsed, and then abandoned at the last minute. It's a battle of wills, played out in small gestures, the cold shoulder, the pointed turning off of the bedside lamp, the deep sigh into a pillow. Some nights, Mum slips out to the kitchen for water and never comes back. Other nights, Dad retreats to the living room, claiming he needs to finish the paper. Children, of course, sense it all. The low voices, the door that clicks shut just a little too hard, the extra set of footprints to the couch in the morning. They learn to recognize the signs, the headache bottle clinking on the nightstand, the extra quiet breakfast, the way Mum's hands shake as she butters toast. No one says anything, but everyone knows. Even the family dog learns to avoid the bedroom after dinner. Sometimes the arguments go in circles, each side keeping score, referencing offences from weeks, months, or even years ago. You never, you always. If you really cared, you would. The past is weaponized, thrown back and forth like pillows in a fight that isn't even supposed to be happening. The word love rarely appears, and if it does, it's sharpened by sarcasm or dulled by habit. On the rare nights when a truce is declared, it's tentative, an arm across the mattress, a brief, uneasy peace. It rarely lasts. Old wounds flare up, new misunderstandings hatch in the dark. The space between the two pillows grows wider as the years pass. Meanwhile, the outside world sees only the neat bedspread, the matching pyjamas, the illusion of marital bliss. "How's your mother's health?" a neighbour might ask, and Dad replies, "Just the usual headaches." Everyone nods. No further explanation required. For Mum, the bedroom is both refuge and trap. It's the only room where she can close the door, but also the one where she can't fully escape. Sometimes, late at night, she lies awake staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks and wondering if this is what she promised all those years ago at the altar. Punchline. In 1950s America, the master bedroom might be where you lay your head, but it's also where you keep your grudges, neatly folded, pressed and hidden under the pillow, right next to the aspirin. You gather for the annual photo, everyone lined up in their finest. The camera clicks, everyone grins, and somewhere, you hope the film can't capture the truth. It's a big production, this ritual of forced happiness, collars starched, hair slicked, shoes shined until they could double as mirrors. Mum fusses over every detail, smoothing skirts and adjusting ties, her own nerves barely hidden behind a cloud of hairspray. Dad stands stiffly in the background, hands in pockets, surveying the scene with the same air of solemn responsibility he brings to funerals and barbecues. The kids are wrangled and posed, the dog is bribed with treats, and no one dares complain, not when the memory of last year's argument still lingers in the air like the smell of burnt toast. The family photo is the great equalizer. Bruises are hidden with powder, eyes are brightened with just enough sleep to avoid suspicion, and the family stands shoulder to shoulder, closer than they ever are in real life. The photographer, sometimes a neighbour, sometimes a stranger at the drugstore, calls out, "Say cheese!" The word is code. Drop your guard, raise your cheeks, and for the next 3 seconds, pretend you live in one of those perfect houses from the Sears catalogue. Behind every grin, there's a story. Johnny just got yelled at for grass stains. Sally's new dress covers a scrape from yesterday's bike crash, or maybe from something she won't talk about. Mum's lipstick is a little brighter than usual, a brave attempt to cover up the exhaustion that sits under her eyes. Dad's jaw is clenched so hard that you worry his smile might snap right in half. As the flash goes off, there's a collective hope that the light is bright enough to white out the shadows, that the momentary togetherness will somehow erase the arguments, the disappointments, the things said behind closed doors. It's not just a photo, it's a wish, frozen in silver nitrate and wishful thinking. You wonder if next year's picture will be any different, or if you'll all just be a little older, a little better at pretending. After the photo is taken, there's an exhale. Tension seeps out of the room, shoulders slump, ties are loosened, shoes kicked off. The mask drops, and the real family emerges, grumpier, messier, and desperately in need of coffee or a stiff drink. The dog immediately shakes off its good behaviour, darting for the nearest mud puddle. Johnny elbows Sally, Mum's patience snaps, Dad heads for the garage. The performance is over. The photo, though, endures. It's placed on the mantle, mailed to relatives, tucked into albums that will someday become archaeological evidence for future generations. Visitors comment on how lovely your family looks, how happy, how perfect. You smile politely and agree, wondering if anyone can see the cracks running through the gloss. Sometimes, late at night, You stare at the picture and try to remember what you were really feeling in that frozen moment. You wonder if anyone else remembers too. Every year the process repeats. The clothes change, the smiles get a little tighter, the dog grows grey around the muzzle, but the act is the same, a snapshot of hope, a keepsake of denial, proof that for one instant you all stood together and pretended well enough to fool a camera and maybe yourselves. Punchline. In 1950s, America, the family photo is less about capturing memories and more about erasing them, one smile at a time. When the relatives visit, it's time for emergency redecorating, flowers on the table, makeup on the bruises, and a script everyone tries to remember. Panic strikes at 7 a.m, with a phone call from Aunt Irene declaring, "We'll be there by noon." Suddenly, the house becomes a military operation. The family fans out, each person assigned to erase the fingerprints of daily life. Dad tackles the yard, mowing the grass with such ferocity you half expect him to start on the neighbour's lawn next. Mum whirls through the house with a speed only fear and a little bit of Valium can summon, vacuuming under the sofa, scrubbing the kitchen tile and stuffing stacks of mail into drawers like an amateur magician. The script is simple. Everything must look perfect. Dishes gleam, the good towels appear in the bathroom, and the fridge is hastily filled with foods nobody eats except on holidays or days of judgment. That odd glass ashtray from the back of the cupboard suddenly becomes an heirloom. You dust things that haven't seen daylight since Truman left office. The real heavy lifting, though, is emotional. Mum stands at the bathroom mirror, blending foundation over every bruise and bite mark, perfecting her smile until it hurts. You get a stern warning. If anyone asks, you fell off your bike. Dad, for his part, practices his easygoing laugh. Never too loud, never too sharp. It's a house-wide rehearsal for a play that will run for exactly as long as the company stays. The younger kids are prepped with their lines. School is great. Dad's teaching me how to fix the car. Mum bakes the best cookies. The older ones know to keep their answers short and their sleeves long. You all exchange glances, a silent pact of solidarity. Even the family dog is on its best behaviour, bribed with half the ham in the fridge. As noon approaches, the tension mounts. Every passing car is a potential invasion. The moment the doorbell rings, all frowns are replaced with Cheshire Cat grins. Aunt Irene floats in, trailing perfume and pointed questions. Uncle Bob gives bone-crushing hugs and laughs a little too long at his own jokes. They scan the room, looking for evidence, not of trouble, but of imperfection. It's a game everyone plays. Spot the weakness, then offer advice over pie. Small talk is a high-wire act. You look tired, dear. Oh, it's just spring cleaning. How's work, son? Great. Got a promotion, actually. If anyone hesitates, someone else jumps into cover. It's the family version of a fire drill. If you keep moving, you won't get burned. Still, the in-laws notice things. They notice the way Mum flinches when Dad reaches for the salt. They notice how quickly you change the subject when someone asks about the black and blue on your arm. They notice, but they don't mention it, except in the car on the way home. Then it becomes part of the gossip circuit, circling back next Thanksgiving in the form of vague concerns. After dinner, as the relatives leave with foil-wrapped leftovers, the family collapses, exhausted, relieved, and a little raw. The flowers droop, the makeup comes off, the good towels disappear. The real house resurfaces, cracks and all. Punchline. In 1950s America, you can fool the in-laws some of the time, yourself most of the time, and the neighbours all of the time, as long as you remember to hide the evidence before company comes calling. Every bad temper, every slammed fist is shrugged off with a joke. Boys will be boys, men will be men, and women will be blamed for both. In 1950s America, nothing gets you out of trouble faster than a well-timed cliché. Your brother comes home with a split lip from fighting at school. Boys will be boys, Dad yells at the dinner table, shatters a plate, storms out to smoke on the porch. He's just blowing off steam. The phrase is a magic eraser, scrubbing away everything from childhood hijinks to adult rage, leaving behind only the faintest whiff of aftershave and unresolved trauma. From the moment you're old enough to walk, you hear it on repeat. Boys are rough, energetic, wild. They break things, including rules and sometimes spirits. When a boy hits his sister, it's dismissed as horseplay. When a man raises his voice or his hand, it's justified as a hard day at work. The world shrugs and tells you to toughen up, to keep the peace, to smooth things over for the sake of family harmony. You watch the double standard play out at every level of life. Boys are active, girls are troublesome, men are authoritative, women are hysterical. When dad loses his temper, it's because someone else pushed him too far. When mum cries, she's being dramatic. When you, a child, get caught in the crossfire, you're told to mind your manners, stay quiet, and above all, don't provoke him. In the neighbourhood, the phrase takes on a life of its own. Every dented mailbox, every broken window, every shriek from the backyard gets chalked up to boys being boys. No one asks why Johnny threw a rock through the neighbour's shed, or why Bobby came to school with bruised knuckles and a haunted look. The grown-ups laugh it off. The mothers sigh and exchange recipes for stain removal. At school, teachers and principals are in on the joke. Boys who act out are spirited, adventurous, full of potential, if only he'd settle down. Girls who act out are given extra chores and stern lectures about modesty. Everyone is working from the same playbook, written in invisible ink and passed down through the generations. In the living room, the television blares with sitcoms where dad's blunders are cause for laughter and mum's exasperation is the punchline. The culture trains everyone to expect little and forgive much. He didn't mean it. He's under a lot of pressure. He works hard, you know. The boys absorb the lesson. Nothing is ever really their fault. The girls absorb a different lesson. If something goes wrong, find a way to make it right, quietly, without a scene. But the unspoken rule is the most powerful. Whatever happens, keep it in the family. Don't tell the neighbours, don't embarrass your parents, don't call attention to the mess. If you must, invent a story, falling down the stairs, walking into a door, tripping on the sidewalk. Blame gravity, blame clumsiness, blame anything but the truth. And so, the excuses pile up, soft as dust and just as pervasive. Over time, you get good at looking away, laughing off the worst, making light of things that are heavy. Boys Will Be Boys becomes a lullaby sung over bruises and broken promises, soothing everyone into complacency. The cost is never counted out loud, but everyone pays it, some with silence, some with scars, all with a quiet hope that the next generation might finally call things what they are. Punchline. In 1950s America, boys will be boys, men will be men, and if anyone asks questions, you can always blame the weather, or, if all else fails, your mother. Christmas, Thanksgiving, the 4th of July, holidays are high-stakes theatre, where gifts are exchanged and grievances are put on ice, until someone cracks. If ever there was a time for performance, it's the holidays in 1950s America. The whole family transforms into a cast of seasoned actors, rehearsing lines in the mirror and polishing smiles until they're almost convincing. The house smells of cinnamon, pine, and anxiety. There's tinsel on the tree, pies cooling on the windowsill, and a low-level tension humming through the walls that could short-circuit the Christmas lights. Mum wakes up before dawn, baking enough cookies to feed the neighbourhood and herself into a coma. She's dusted with flour and hope, hoping this year, maybe, nobody brings up the incident at last year's dinner, or why Aunt Carol isn't speaking to Grandpa anymore. She marshals the troops. Let's be on our best behaviour. Translation: hide the wine, hide the bruises, and whatever you do, don't mention politics. Dad gets the tree into the stand, muttering curses and nearly sawing off a finger in the process. By the time the relatives arrive, he's already on his third just to take the edge off drink. Presents are arranged with the precision of a military operation. Every gift is double-checked to avoid repeats or reminders of the year someone received a set of bathroom scales. Siblings are briefed. No fighting, no complaining, and under no circumstances are you to remind your cousin Billy about the time he set the backyard on fire with sparklers. Guests arrive with casseroles and fragile egos. Coats are hung, cheeks are pinched, and compliments about the new wallpaper are delivered with the enthusiasm of a tax audit. The conversation sticks to safe territory, weather, recipes, how tall the kids are now. But beneath every word there's an undercurrent. Old fights, unpaid debts, the unresolved who really should have inherited the silverware grudge from 1947. Dinner is a pageant. The table groans under the weight of roast turkey, candied yams, and the expectation that everyone will act like nothing's wrong. Plates clatter, wine glasses fill and refill, and forks become props in a drama that everyone knows by heart. Someone inevitably brings up football scores or how the country is going to hell in a handbasket, and everyone laughs a little too loudly, as if volume can drown out the ticking time bomb of family resentment. The kids, hopped up on sugar and adrenaline, are herded into the living room to play nice. They build alliances, trade secrets, and occasionally whisper about what's really going on upstairs. In the corner, Grandma offers unsolicited advice about child-rearing, marriage, and the correct way to baste a ham, all in one breath. Eventually someone cracks. Maybe it's Uncle Ed, who drops a passive-aggressive comment about last year's ham. Maybe it's Mom, who finally snaps when someone mentions how well she hides her headaches. Or maybe it's Dad, one drink past his comfort zone, deciding that now is the time to lecture the room on personal responsibility. Voices rise, accusations fly, and all the grievances packed in Tupperware since last year come spilling out onto the holiday table. But after the eruption, there's a quiet. A new round of dessert and awkward truce, the slow resumption of normalcy. Hugs are exchanged, coats are retrieved, and promises are made to get together again soon, though everyone knows it'll take another year and a selective memory before anyone feels up for another round. Punchline. In 1950s America, the holidays are less about peace on earth and more about making it through dinner without someone throwing the mashed potatoes, and if all else fails, you can always blame the fruitcake. You dream of running away, of starting over, of making a dramatic exit. But you also know there's nowhere to go. Not really. Not yet. Everyone has an escape plan. Maybe yours involves a suitcase under the bed, a collection of coins filched from Dad's change jar, and a mental map of bus stops you're not actually allowed to use. Maybe it's more subtle, a fantasy of vanishing into a different city, changing your name, reinventing yourself as someone whose life fits neatly into a magazine ad. You picture yourself on a train, looking out the window at fields rolling by, free of obligation, of secrets, of the gravitational pull of the same four walls. But in 1950s America, escape is mostly a daydream. There's a world out there, sure, but it's fuzzy at the edges, defined by rumours and black and white television reruns. The idea of leaving is exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Where would you go? Who would you be? And most importantly, what would you tell the neighbours? For kids, running away is an annual rite of passage. You stuff a peanut butter sandwich and your favourite comic into a paper bag, stomp out the back door and make it all the way to the edge of the yard before the weight of reality and the smell of dinner pulls you back. You know the script. After 10 minutes hiding behind the lilac bush, you march back in, ready to negotiate a better bedtime or at least a second dessert. For adults, the fantasy is more complicated. Mum sometimes gazes out the kitchen window for just a little too long, dish towel twisting in her hands. Dad jokes about buying a boat and sailing away, but you know he gets seasick in the bathtub. Escape, for them, is mostly about small acts of defiance. Joining a bridge club, sneaking a cigarette on the porch, hiding $5 in the coffee tin just in case. Every once in a while, Someone in the neighbourhood actually tries it. Mrs. Patterson down the block packs up the car, takes the kids, and drives off to her sister's house in Ohio. For 2 weeks, the local gossip mill works overtime, passing judgment and sympathy in equal measure. Then, as always, she comes back. The house lights up again, the curtains are drawn, and everyone agrees to act like nothing happened. The truth is, most people don't leave, not because they don't want to, but because the invisible fences are stronger than the white picket ones. There's money to worry about, children to think of, reputations to protect. There's a lifetime of what will people say, pressed into your bones. So instead you get creative with your escapes, an extra trip to the grocery store, a longer walk home from school, a new book hidden under the mattress. You take vacations in your head, brief, exhilarating, and always, inevitably, interrupted by the sound of the phone ringing or someone calling you back to dinner. Even the ultimate escape, divorce, is so rare and scandalous that it's whispered about in the grocery aisle like a contagious disease. She just couldn't take it anymore, someone murmurs, and everyone nods, pretending they can't imagine why. So, you bide your time, you collect tiny freedoms, dream small dreams, plan big exits that end at the edge of the driveway. You become an expert at patience, a student of hope, a master of the slow, quiet resistance that comes from surviving one more day in the house you can't quite leave. Punchline. In 1950s America, everyone talks about getting out, but most of the time, escape means hiding in plain sight and remembering where you left your suitcase just in case. Every so often, someone at school asks the right question, but there's a system in place for not noticing, and it works better than you'd think. Maybe it's Mrs. Hargrove, the guidance counsellor with a cat's eye glasses and a tissue box always at the ready. She's got a knack for stopping you in the hall, hand gentle on your shoulder, voice soft as chalk dust. How are things at home? It's a dangerous question, and you know the rules. Keep your answers vague, your smile steady, and above all, don't make anyone worry. You say, fine, and hope your socks cover the bruise on your ankle. The thing is, Mrs. Hargrove is sharp. She sees the patterns, late homework, sudden outbursts, the way you flinch when someone slams a locker. She notices you're quiet on Mondays and a little too energetic on Fridays. Maybe she's seen it before, maybe she even lived it herself, but the 1950s school system is a well-oiled machine, full of good intentions powered by polite avoidance. You're summoned to her office for a little chat. The room smells like peppermint and construction paper. She asks about your grades, your friends, your plans for summer. Her eyes linger on the scrape on your hand. Did you fall? She asks. You nod. She nods back. The moment hangs in the air, heavy and bright as the afternoon sun. For a second, you want to say everything, spill your whole secret, all the shouting and the hiding and the nights you slept with a chair under the door, but you don't. The words shrivel up, replaced by the chorus in your head. Don't make trouble. Don't cause a scene. Don't tell. There's a process for this. The school counsellor records her suspicions on a special form, filed in a drawer labelled confidential. If she pushes too hard, she risks her job, the school's reputation, and your family's privacy. 3 things that matter more than any bruised ego or actual bruise. She promises to keep an eye on things, to be there if you ever want to talk, but you both know the limits of the system. You're not the only one. Other kids visit the office, Johnny with the black eye, Mary who never brings lunch, Bobby who jumps at loud noises. You swap stories in the playground, sometimes comparing notes, more often just sitting in companionable silence. Nobody wants to be the kid whose parents get called in. That's how secrets get bigger and problems get smaller, filtered through layers of bureaucracy, sanded down until they're not sharp enough to hurt anyone important. If a teacher notices something, there's a protocol. They call your parents first. The message is always the same: we're concerned. Parents show up, armed with excuses. He's clumsy, she's moody. We've just moved. There's nothing to worry about. Everyone shakes hands, agrees to try harder, and goes home for dinner. The cycle resumes. By Tuesday, nobody remembers, except you, and maybe Mrs. Hargrove. The school itself works overtime to look the other way. Assemblies about honesty and courage, posters about speaking up, a suggestion box by the main office that's always suspiciously empty. If anyone asks, "Is everything all right?" the answer is always yes, even when it's written all over your face, so you learn to fly under the radar. You get better at hiding bruises, better at making up stories, better at surviving without asking for help. Mrs. Hargrove still watches, still hopes you'll come by her office again. Maybe one day you will. But for now, you slip out the door, back into the world where noticing too much is the one thing nobody can afford to do. Punchline. In 1950s America, the counselor can spot every secret. But don't worry, there's a form for that, filed away, where it can't do any harm. The day ends, the house goes silent, and you lie awake, counting the cracks in the ceiling and the thumps you pretend you didn't hear. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. Nighttime in a 1950s home is supposed to be peaceful. That's what the magazines say anyway. Soft lamps, a cosy bedspread, a warm glass of milk, a mother in a robe smiling gently while the children drift off into innocent dreams of baseball cards and shiny bicycles. But that's the version of nighttime that exists on paper. In real life, night is when the house stops pretending. The daytime is busy enough to distract you. There are chores, schedules, radios, television, school bells, grocery lists, and the steady hum of activity that lets everyone avoid what they're actually feeling. But at night the world slows down. The neighbourhood quiets. The cars disappear into driveways. The lights click off one by one like the house is slowly holding its breath. And in that stillness, you can hear everything. The refrigerator hums in the kitchen like it's trying to convince you that you're safe. The pipes creak. The floorboards complain with every step. Even the wallpaper seems to listen. You lie in bed under a thin blanket that smells faintly of detergent and old worry, and your mind starts doing what it always does when it finally has room to breathe. It replays the day, that look Dad gave Mum at breakfast, the way Mum's hands shook when she poured coffee, the forced laughter at dinner, the silence after someone slammed a door. The tiny signals your body learned to memorize, tone, footsteps, shadows under the door. The cracks in the ceiling become your nightly roadmap. You count them like sheep, except sheep are soothing, and the cracks just make you wonder how long the house has been falling apart. Sometimes you hear laughter, and it's the wrong kind. Dad's laugh is big, loud, unpredictable, like thunder you didn't see coming. It might mean he's in a good mood. It might mean he's had one too many drinks. It might mean someone said something that landed wrong. The worst part is you don't know which until it's too late, and nighttime has a way of making everything feel closer, louder, sharper. Your bedroom door becomes the thinnest barrier in the world. You can hear your parents whispering in the hallway, then talking, then arguing. The argument starts soft, careful, like they're trying to keep it contained. But the more they try to keep it quiet, the worse it becomes, because everything unspoken turns into pressure, and pressure always finds a way out. You hear the phrase, "not tonight." You hear "you never." You hear "after everything I do." You hear a drawer slam. You hear a chair scrape. You hear the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. And this is the moment where the kids become professionals. You don't get out of bed. You don't make noise. You don't call out. You don't cry. Crying is like lighting a match in a room full of gas. You stay very still, hoping that stillness will make you invisible. You pretend to be asleep the way people pretend not to hear ambulance sirens, by convincing yourself it's happening to someone else. Your heart beats too fast, your stomach twists, your hands go cold, and you listen. Because listening is how you survive. Sometimes the argument passes. Sometimes the house settles back into its old creaks and sighs, and you let yourself breathe again. Other nights, it escalates. A door slams so hard you can feel the vibration in your mattress. A wall takes a hit. Something shatters, probably a glass, maybe something else. You memorize these sounds the way other kids memorize multiplication tables, and then comes the worst part, the waiting afterward. The quiet that follows violence is different from normal quiet. It's heavy. It sits on your chest. It makes you afraid to move, even after you're sure it's over. You lie there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you should go check on Mom, or if that will make things worse. Wondering if Dad is sitting in the living room smoking, or if he's asleep already, as if nothing happened. Wondering if anyone is going to apologize tomorrow. You already know the answer. Morning will come, like it always does, and the house will reset. Breakfast will be served. Coffee will pour. The radio will play. Everyone will pretend the night never happened. And you will do your part, because you've learned the rules. You will smile. You will swallow your feelings. You will step carefully around the cracks. Punchline. In 1950s, America, nighttime is when the lights go out, and the truth finally has room to speak. Nothing says togetherness like being trapped in a 2-ton metal box with your family and nowhere to run. You sit in the back seat, counting telephone poles, praying Dad doesn't hit a red light, or hit the brakes too hard when Mum says the wrong thing. It's America's favourite pastime, scenic repression, with a side of cigarette ash. The ritual starts in the driveway. Dad is already muttering as he packs the trunk with military precision, grumbling about how nobody appreciates his system, and how, by God, next time he'll leave you all at home. Mum double-checks the picnic basket, making sure there's enough for everyone, even though someone will inevitably complain about the sandwiches being soggy and the lemonade being warm. You and your siblings are marshalled into the back seat, elbows sharp, knees sticky, all claims to personal space surrendered at the door. Seatbelts? Not in this era. You're free to bounce, slide and flinch at every turn, though flinching, you learn, is best kept subtle. You each claim a window, a footrest, a view of the road and a grudge or two. The middle seat is a hotly contested demilitarized zone, a buffer in case things get too heated on either flank. Dad's at the wheel, his kingdom for the duration of the journey. The dashboard is his command center, and the radio dial is not up for debate. If you're lucky, it's a baseball game. If you're not, it's his music, tinny big band, or crooners lamenting lost love, their heartbreak matching the mood in the back seat. The air is thick with smoke from Dad's ever-present cigarette, curling around your head like a warning. Don't you dare roll down the window without asking. Mum sits in the passenger seat, posture perfect, hands folded in her lap. She's the co-pilot, the navigator, the peacekeeper. Every so often she offers a suggestion. Maybe we should stop for ice cream, and Dad responds with a grunt or a glare, depending on the mileage left in his patience tank. You know better than to ask, are we there yet? The answer is always no, and if you ask again, we'll turn this car around. He won't, but the threat hangs in the air like exhaust. Outside, the world rushes past in streaks of green and gold, telephone poles ticking off the miles like a slow metronome. Inside, time stretches. You invent games. Who can spot the most cows? Who can hold their breath past the next bridge? Who can go the longest without getting yelled at? You become experts in silent communication, a series of kicks and nudges and eyebrow raises. The tension in the car is a living thing. It grows with every wrong turn, every missed exit, every shortcut that adds 20 minutes to the journey. Arguments are held in code. Did you remember the map? I thought you packed the sunscreen. Voices rise, eyes roll, and the car fills with a kind of quiet that's anything but peaceful. Rest stops are bittersweet. Everyone stumbles out, stretching legs and tempers. Mum disappears into the restroom, Dad hovers by the car hood, kids scatter to the vending machines like prisoners on parole. For a brief moment the open air is freedom, and then, inevitably, you're herded back inside, tension restored, the journey resumed. The car ride ends as all journeys do, with relief, with exhaustion, with a silent vow never to do it again, until next Sunday when the process repeats. You spill out onto the curb, grateful for solid ground and silence that doesn't hum with the engine's anxious rhythm. Punchline. In 1950s, America, family togetherness came with 4 wheels, 2 doors, 1 ashtray, and enough bottled tension to power you straight through to next week's car ride. No seatbelt required. When school calls home, the script is ready. At the PTA, Mum smiles through gritted teeth. Dad shakes hands a little too firmly, and everyone agrees that Johnny's just going through a phase. The real issues never make it to the agenda, but everyone leaves feeling like they've accomplished something, usually the art of pretending. The monthly PTA meeting is a stage play with too many directors and no audience. In the parking lot, station wagons idle, headlights blinking nervously. Parents file in, clutching notepads, casseroles and opinions. Mum smooths her skirt, checks her lipstick and runs through her mental checklist. Act friendly, look concerned, and, if necessary, deflect, deflect, deflect. Dad strides beside her, jaw set, already bracing for someone to mention behaviour or worse, home environment. Inside, the folding chairs are set up in neat rows, as if order alone can keep the chaos of family life at bay. The principal gives his customary speech, thick with platitudes about working together as a community. The teachers read from prepared notes, their eyes never quite meeting the parents. There are calls for volunteers to chaperone dances, run bake sales, or organise safety week. But nobody mentions the real hazards, like why Johnny flinched when the gym teacher tossed him the ball, or why half the class knows the difference between a friendly yell and something more. When the subject of difficult students comes up, there's a polite ripple of laughter. Johnny's mentioned by name, but only in the softest tones. He's so energetic, someone says, which is code for, he's about 1 argument away from setting the art room on fire. He just needs structure at home, adds another, glancing at Mom, who nods along, holding her smile in place as if it's about to shatter. Dad leans in, squeezes her hand a little too tightly, and assures everyone that things are just fine. Boys will be boys. If anything more serious surfaces, late homework, mysterious bruises, changes in mood, it's quickly paved over with a fresh coat of euphemism. Growing pains, the adjustment period, just a phase. It's not lying exactly. It's a group exercise in willful optimism, a shared fantasy that nothing bad ever happens to good families, and all problems can be solved with a bake sale and a starchy handshake. The real discussions take place in the hallways and the ladies' room, whispered between cups of weak coffee. Mrs. Patterson asks Mom if she's doing all right, her tone just a little too pointed. The school nurse corners Dad, hands him a pamphlet about stress. Everyone trades tips, how to get ink out of white shirts, how to get kids to eat vegetables, how to hide the fact that nobody knows what they're doing. Alibis are exchanged like recipes. If the principal calls, just say he was up all night with a cold. Tell them your husband's been travelling for work. It's a network of plausible deniability, spun tighter than any safety net. Eventually there's a vote on something. New playground equipment, library books, a fundraiser for a cause everyone already forgot. Hands go up, motions pass, everyone feels productive. There are smiles, promises to keep in touch, and the slow shuffle to the exit. Everyone breathing a little easier once they're back outside under the streetlights. Back in the car, Mum's smile fades. Dad loosens his tie, and you drive home in silence. The PTA meeting is over, but the show goes on. Johnny's phase continues. The script is memorised, ready for next time, and the real work, surviving, hiding, hoping, picks up right where it left off. Punchline. In 1950s America, the PTA isn't just about parent-teacher conferences, it's about mastering the alibi and making sure the curtain never rises on the truth. Dinner is served promptly at 6, along with a generous helping of anxiety. Conversation is measured in calories. Say too much, you get burned. Say too little, you still get burned. The clink of cutlery is louder than any argument, and passing the salt sometimes feels like a peace negotiation. The table is set with surgical precision. Knives on the right, forks on the left, napkins folded tight enough to mop up the messes no one dares mention. The roast is carved, mashed potatoes scooped, peas reluctantly nudged to the far side of the plate. Mum floats between kitchen and dining room, a vision of hospitality with a pinch of barely contained dread. Dad sits at the head, king of all he surveys, surveying for any hint of disrespect or, worse, disagreement. You learn early that the table has its own geography. Safe topics are placed in the centre, like bread baskets, the weather, school grades, a new recipe clipped from a magazine. Dangerous subjects are kept at the edges, to be circled warily or not at all, like the dent in the fender or why Johnny hasn't spoken to anyone since Tuesday. You master the art of small talk, but your real skill is reading the room, the tightening of Dad's jaw, the way Mum's hands tremble as she pours gravy, the nervous shuffle of a sibling's foot under the table. Timing is everything. Compliment the casserole too soon and it sounds fake. Too late, and you risk another round of "do you know how long I spent in the kitchen?" If someone laughs, you wait to see who joins in and who looks away. The wrong joke can freeze the room faster than a power outage. Sometimes the meal is a silent movie, chewing, swallowing, glancing at the clock, everyone counting down to when it's safe to excuse themselves. Other times, it's a game of hot potato, each person trying to pass the focus along before they get grilled. How was school? Fine. Anything happen at work? Same old. Did you hear from Aunt Edna? No, but she sent a postcard. Each answer short, polite, and thoroughly rehearsed. Passing the salt becomes a diplomatic act. Do you reach across or wait for it to be offered? Is it safer to ask Mom or Dad, or hope a sibling takes pity on you? Every move is calculated, every phrase measured. You notice when Dad takes 2 helpings of dessert, good mood, or when he skips it entirely, danger zone. If he loosens his tie, relax, but not too much. If he keeps it tight, keep your head down. Occasionally someone breaks protocol. A spill, a joke gone wrong, an accidental reference to that thing nobody talks about. The reaction is immediate. A tense silence, a look from Dad, an apology from Mom, a flurry of napkins, and the meal resets if you're lucky. If not, dinner ends early, and everyone disperses to corners of the house, each with their own unfinished plate and unfinished business. The dog hovers under the table, expert at sensing moods and catching scraps. You envy the dog, no expectations, no lines to memorize, just the freedom to leave when things get too intense. At the end of the meal, plates are cleared, leftovers are wrapped, and the table is wiped until no trace remains. The unwritten rules stay in place, ready for tomorrow night. You carry the tension with you, tucked away with the taste of green beans and anxiety. Later, as you lie in bed, you'll replay every word, every glance, trying to figure out if you got it right this time. Punchline. In 1950s, America, the family dinner isn't just about food, it's a nightly test of etiquette, survival, and how quietly you can ask for the salt. Mrs. Henderson next door notices everything. She waters her hydrangeas while cataloguing your trash, your bruises, and the decibel level of last night's discussion. You wonder if she's your silent ally, or just taking notes for the neighbourhood's annual rumour bake-off. There's one in every block. The neighbour whose window faces yours, who always seems to be on her porch when the mail arrives, and who knows when your dad got a new car before you do. Mrs. Henderson is both guardian and informant, camouflaged by pastel gardening gloves and a watering can shaped like a duck. She's the sort of person who starts a sentence with, "I don't like to gossip, but," and then delivers a 50 minutes monologue on your family's recycling habits. Her hydrangeas are legendary, blue, pink and suspiciously healthy, as if fed by secrets and scandal. She weeds her flower beds with the same focus she brings to neighbourhood surveillance. Every trash can left out an hour late, every mismatched sock on the line, every Band-Aid that wasn't there yesterday. It's all part of her living, breathing data collection project. She waves to the mailman, offers lemonade to the paperboy, and always has a gentle, knowing smile when you walk by, one that makes you wonder if she's offering comfort or collecting evidence. You catch her peering through the curtains when Dad pulls into the driveway late, or when a police cruiser idles out front. She's there the morning after, watering her azaleas, eyes flicking from your house to her rose bush and back. Her greetings are laced with hidden meaning. "Rough night, dear. Your mother looked so tired at church. Such a shame about that broken window kids these days." Each remark lands like a pebble in a pond, rippling outward to reach every corner of the neighbourhood by sundown. Kids steer clear of her yard, half convinced she can read minds. You practice the art of quick, non-committal conversation, learning which stories are safest to tell and which ones are better left unsaid. She offers cookies and advice in equal measure. "Eat something, you're too thin. Tell your mother I'm thinking of her." You never quite know if she's warning you or warning everyone else about you. In moments of crisis, Mrs. Henderson is first to notice. If someone leaves in a hurry or slams a door so loud it startles the dog, she makes a mental note. She's the one who quietly calls the school to check on that poor child, or leaves a casserole at your door after a particularly noisy night. Sometimes it's hard not to wish she'd just look away. The adults have their own opinions. "She means well," Mom says, pulling the curtains tighter. "She's got too much time on her hands," Dad mutters, glancing over his newspaper. Neighbours debate whether she's a guardian angel or just a busybody, but everyone listens when she speaks, because in a town where secrets are currency, Mrs. Henderson is the bank. The annual block party is her Super Bowl. She floats from table to table, dispensing compliments and sly observations, piecing together a mosaic of everyone's business. By Labour Day, she knows who's fighting, who's moving, who's pregnant, and whose tulips are drooping from neglect. The stories grow in the retelling. Details get swapped, motives added, a hint of tragedy spiced with just enough sympathy to keep her out of trouble. And sometimes, just sometimes, you think she really does care. The warm pie on your porch, the gentle knock when you stay home sick, the way she lingers when she asks, "You all right, honey?" Maybe she is watching out for you. Or maybe she's just making sure the neighbourhood story stays interesting. Punchline. In 1950s America, the gossipy neighbour could be your guardian angel, or the reason everyone knows you got grounded before you even walk in the door. There's a bedroom door at the end of the hallway, sometimes locked, sometimes just quietly closed. You learn to read the signs. A slipper in the doorway means not tonight. A light under the door means tread carefully, and silence well. Silence could mean anything at all. In the mythology of the 1950s American home, the master bedroom door is a powerful symbol, more meaningful sometimes than anything that happens on the other side. It marks the edge of the family's territory, the threshold where the public performance of normalcy gives way to the private rituals of marriage, secrets, and survival. Every child in the house quickly becomes fluent in the unspoken language of doors, how they open, how they close, and what it means when they don't move at all. Some nights, the door is left ajar. humming with the sounds of parents arguing in low voices, words lost to the drone of the television in the living room. You try not to listen, but your ears are tuned to every creak, every stifled sob, every edge in Dad's voice, or tremor in Mum's. Sometimes you hear nothing at all, a silence that's not peaceful, but heavy and watchful, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Other nights you find the door locked. This is the ultimate sign, the house's version of DEFCON 1. You know not to knock, not to ask for help with homework or a drink of water. You and your siblings drift quietly around the house, whispering to each other in code, swapping theories about what's happening behind the locked door. Is it another fight? A truce? An attempt at reconciliation doomed before it even begins? The possibilities swirl, heavy as the air before rain. You become an expert in body language. If Dad emerges with his shirt untucked and a cloud over his face, you keep your distance for the rest of the night. If Mum's eyes are red at breakfast, you make your own lunch and thank the universe for school cafeterias. Some mornings, the tension in the house feels so thick you could spread it on toast. The door isn't always locked, though. Sometimes it's just quietly closed, sending a different message. It's not exactly a command, more like a suggestion. Privacy. Please. There are nights when Mum closes herself inside, nursing a migraine or hiding a fresh argument. There are times when Dad retreats, radio turned up just enough to drown out the rest of the world. You're left to tiptoe past, careful not to disturb the uneasy peace. You learn to recognize the clues. A stack of magazines by the threshold means Mum needs time alone. Dad's slippers neatly lined up point toward an early bedtime, the domestic version of a ceasefire. But sometimes there's just nothing. No sound, no light, no movement. The stillness is its own kind of warning, a signal that whatever storm has passed hasn't really gone anywhere, just paused to catch its breath. In other families you hear rumours of doors that stay open all night, of parents who read bedtime stories or talk late into the evening. You wonder what that would be like, an open door, an open invitation. But here, doors are boundaries, barriers, a last line of defence against the things no one wants to talk about. As you grow older, you realise that every family has its own bedroom door code, its own set of rules about when to enter, when to wait, and when to leave well enough alone. The bedroom door becomes a lesson in caution, a reminder that sometimes the best way to survive is to keep your distance and wait for morning. Punchline. In 1950s America, the bedroom door says it all. Locked, closed, or barely ajar. It's the house's way of telling you when to stay away and when to start worrying all over again. So, as you lie back in your soft modern bed, no vinyl headboard, no mysterious stains on the wallpaper, no neighbour peering through the curtains. Let's take a moment to reflect on the beautiful absurdity and the quietly heroic suffering of surviving just a single day in 1950s America. Maybe tonight you feel a little more grateful for the small things. Bedroom doors that mean privacy, not secrets. Family dinners that don't come with a side of fear. And the glorious freedom to complain about your life on the internet, instead of whispering it over instant coffee at a Tupperware party. If history teaches us anything, it's that people are stubborn, resourceful, and, let's be honest, a little ridiculous. The pastel kitchen may have been sparkling, but life behind it was anything but spotless. Every family photo hid a story, every immaculate lawn covered up a few emotional potholes, and every perfect household came with its own set of creaks in the night. But people endured. They laughed where they could, held on where they had to, and found comfort in the rituals, even if it was just piling into the car for a drive to nowhere, or practicing their best smile for the neighbours. So tonight, as you drift off, be gentle with yourself. Remember that comfort is a rare thing in history, and if you have it now, you've earned every moment of peace that comes your way. Maybe whisper a quiet thank you to those who came before you, the ones who survived with humour, grit, and the occasional overcooked casserole. Because the truth is, behind every era's normal, there's a story of people muddling through, loving imperfectly, and somehow making it to tomorrow. Sleep well, and remember, the real American dream is a good night's rest with nothing to hide from. Good night.